The Krell Dominion had always been a species of conquerors. Their sleek, obsidian-colored ships hung ominously in Earth's orbit, blocking out the sun as their ultimatum echoed across every major city on the planet. They had taken thousands of worlds before, and in each case they gave the same offer: submit or face total destruction. Their king, draped in ceremonial armor, appeared on every screen with cold, unblinking eyes that seemed to pierce through the soul of anyone watching. His voice, a low, growling command, was translated in real time into every language spoken on Earth. Humans. Humans! The Krell King began. You are an insignificant race, clinging to a small rock in the void. You have been granted an honor few receive. Pledge your loyalty to the Krell Dominion, and you may live. Resist, and you will be crushed under the might of our empire. You have 3 days to decide. The message repeated every hour, reminding Earth's population of the impending doom. The Krell had arrived suddenly, with no warning, and their fleet was the largest armada humanity had ever seen. The response from Earth's leaders was immediate. The United Earth Coalition, hastily formed during humanity's first contact with alien life years before, convened in an emergency session. Politicians, military leaders, and scientists from every nation joined the meeting virtually, their faces grim but resolute. The president of the coalition, a seasoned diplomat named Elena Nakamura, addressed the assembly with the determination that had earned her the position. We will not submit. Our ancestors fought wars for independence, for survival, for freedom. This is no different. The Krell may have technology that surpasses ours, but they have not faced the full resolve of humanity. The decision was unanimous. There would be no surrender. Earth would fight. Preparations for war began immediately. Cities across the globe transformed overnight into fortresses. Scientists worked around the clock to reverse engineer alien technology gathered from previous encounters, while military forces mobilized with a speed and efficiency that defied the usual bureaucratic delays. Civilians were evacuated from the largest metropolitan areas, moving into underground bunkers designed to withstand bombardments from space. Yet, despite the fear that rippled through the population, there was a sense of unity that hadn't existed in decades. The Krell had done something remarkable. In their arrogance, they had united humanity against a common enemy. On the second day, the Krell began their assault. Small landing craft descended from their capital ships, touching down in the center of Earth's largest cities: New York, Beijing, Moscow, and Tokyo, among others. Each craft unleashed squads of Krell soldiers, towering reptilian creatures, encased in power armor that seemed impenetrable. Their advance was swift and brutal, tearing through the initial defenses humanity had managed to put in place. Skyscrapers crumbled under the force of their plasma weapons, and streets became battlegrounds littered with debris and bodies. In the opening hours, it seemed as if the Krell were right in their arrogance. Earth's military, despite its best efforts, was struggling to contain the invasion. But humanity had never been defined by its weapons or technology alone. It was their spirit, their adaptability, and their unwillingness to yield that had seen them through countless struggles throughout history. This war would be no different. As the Krell continued their onslaught, pockets of human resistance began to form. In New York, a group of soldiers, armed with prototype railguns, managed to hold back a Krell detachment long enough for civilians to escape. In Tokyo, a team of engineers hacked into a Krell warship's navigation system, forcing it to crash into the Pacific Ocean before it could deploy more troops. Every act of defiance, no matter how small, chipped away at the Krell's perception of humanity as weak and easily conquerable. The Krell King, watching the progress of the invasion from his command ship, grew impatient. These humans were proving more resilient than expected. He had hoped to avoid a prolonged conflict, preferring swift, decisive victories that would break the spirit of those he conquered. But the humans weren't breaking, they were fighting back harder with each passing hour. By the end of the second day, the streets of Earth's cities were drenched in fire and blood. Buildings that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble, and millions of lives had already been lost. Yet, despite the devastation, the Krell had not gained full control of any major city. Human forces, though battered and outgunned, were holding their ground in key locations, coordinating their efforts through encrypted communications networks that the Krell had not yet managed to disrupt. On the third day, as the ultimatum neared its deadline, the Krell King made another broadcast. This time, his tone was less commanding, more irritated. The losses his forces were sustaining were unacceptable. He had underestimated these humans, but he would not make the same mistake twice. "You continue to resist," the Krell King sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "This only ensures your extinction. In 1 hour, we will raze your cities to the ground one by one until there is nothing left but ash. Surrender now, and you may yet live." Earth's leaders gathered once more, but this time there was no debate. Nakamura addressed the world, her voice calm but filled with the same unshakable resolve. "We do not bow to tyrants. Humanity will fight, no matter the cost." And so, as the final hour approached, the world braced itself for the onslaught. Humanity had made its choice. There would be no submission. The Krell had demanded war, and now they would see just how far humans were willing to go to defend their home. As the Krell invasion intensified, humanity adapted, as it always had throughout its turbulent history. While the initial battles saw humans struggling to match the technological superiority of the Krell, the turning point came when Earth's leaders began to exploit the one advantage they knew they possessed: unpredictability. The Krell, with their vast empire and superior technology, had become complacent, relying on their overwhelming force and the terror they instilled. But Earth was not like any of the planets they had conquered before. Military strategists, engineers, and hackers across the globe worked in tandem, using every resource available to undermine the Krell's technological dominance. Earth's defenses, once reliant on conventional military tactics, now evolved into something far more dangerous. Human forces began to use guerrilla warfare, striking the Krell where they least expected, retreating into the ruins of their cities, and launching surprise attacks that destabilized Krell movements. The most crucial of these tactics was the use of psychological warfare. A small team of cyber specialists within Earth's intelligence agencies crafted a plan to disrupt the Krell communication networks. Their goal was not just to cripple Krell coordination, but to introduce doubt and paranoia into the minds of the Krell soldiers and their commanders. They fed false information into Krell systems, fabricating reports of secret human weapons that could wipe out entire battalions with a single strike. The Krell were unfamiliar with the human concept of misinformation. On their conquered worlds, enemies rarely fought back with such creativity. The Krell soldiers became anxious, second-guessing every human move, unsure if the next ambush would be a conventional assault or the deployment of these rumored weapons. In addition, Earth scientists unveiled a series of advanced weapon prototypes. One such weapon, the Pulse Disruptor, was designed to interfere with the Krell's power armor systems, causing their suits to malfunction and leaving them vulnerable in the heat of battle. These disruptors, combined with EMP bombs, short-circuited the Krell's technological superiority, leveling the playing field. Human soldiers, now equipped with modified railguns and anti-Krell armor, took to the streets with renewed vigor, ready to exploit every weakness in the alien invaders' arsenal. But humanity's strategy went beyond technological innovation. There were darker methods in play, ones that Earth's leaders were hesitant to acknowledge but necessary for survival. Faced with the overwhelming force of the Krell, some human commanders authorized scorched earth tactics, sacrificing entire districts and even small cities to prevent the Krell from gaining a foothold. These brutal strategies were a bitter pill to swallow, but the leaders knew that the only way to defeat the Krell was to fight as ruthlessly as their invaders. One of the most controversial strategies involved biological warfare. Deep within secret labs, Earth's biologists worked on a virus engineered specifically to target the Krell's unique physiology. The virus was fast-acting, spreading through the Krell ranks via their food and water supplies. The effects were catastrophic. Krell soldiers, once unstoppable, were now weakened by a disease they had no immunity against. Human forces, armed with masks and inoculations, waged war on the sickened Krell, capitalizing on their vulnerability with brutal efficiency. The sight of Krell's soldiers, previously considered invincible, lying helpless in the streets, coughing up blood as their comrades fled in panic, sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical devastation. The once mighty Krell began to question their own superiority. Fear, an emotion alien to them in their previous campaigns, now gripped their forces as they realized they were fighting an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Meanwhile, human forces coordinated attacks on Krell supply lines and infrastructure. Saboteurs infiltrated alien bases, disabling vital systems and planting explosives that would cause chaos during Krell operations. In one daring raid, a human strike team managed to hijack a Krell supply ship and deliver it back to Earth's forces, filled with alien weaponry and technology ripe for reverse engineering. It was an unprecedented victory, and it fueled the belief that humanity could not only survive but perhaps even turn the tide of the war. However, the most significant blow to the Krell came from the intelligence gathered through interrogations of captured Krell officers. Human scientists and intelligence agents had devised methods to break through the Krell's mental conditioning, extracting valuable information about their military strategies and the location of their command center. It was through these interrogations that Earth's leaders learned a critical detail: the Krell King was not hiding safely on his homeworld as originally believed. Instead, he was overseeing the invasion from a heavily fortified command center aboard his flagship, which had been stationed in Earth's orbit since the beginning of the conflict. This revelation changed everything. The human leadership realized that the war could be won not through a slow, grinding defense, but by a single, decisive strike. The Krell were a species driven by hierarchical structures, and their king was not just a ruler but the very embodiment of their power. If the king could be captured or killed, the morale of the Krell would collapse, and the invasion would falter. A plan was set in motion, one that would abandon the traditional rules of warfare entirely. Earth's military leaders decided that the only way to end the war swiftly and decisively was to directly target the Krell King. It was a gamble, a high-risk operation that would require Earth's finest soldiers, advanced technology, and an unprecedented level of coordination across human forces. The goal was not just to assassinate the Krell King, but to capture him alive, to drag him through the streets of Earth as a symbol of humanity's defiance and victory. As the Krell pressed their advantage in the cities, humanity's leaders finalized the details of their plan. Special forces units were deployed, their mission clear: infiltrate the Krell King's fortress aboard his flagship and bring him back to Earth. The human forces knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they also knew that the Krell had underestimated their resolve. The human strike team, composed of elite soldiers who had survived countless skirmishes with the Krell, prepared for what would be their most dangerous mission yet. Their objective to decapitate the Krell leadership and show the galaxy that humanity would not only resist but triumph over those who sought to enslave them. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a brutal, ruthless battle that would determine the fate of Earth and perhaps the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. The infiltration team moved swiftly through the darkness of space, their small craft cloaked from the sensors of the massive Krell flagship hovering above Earth. The human special forces, handpicked from the most elite units across the globe, were not merely soldiers, they were survivors of countless battles against the Krell. Their faces were grim under their helmets, their eyes set on the task ahead, capturing the Krell King alive. The plan was daring, perhaps even reckless, but it was the only option that offered a chance to end the war quickly. Humanity's military leaders knew that the Krell were a species of hierarchy. Without their king, their forces would fall into disarray. It wasn't enough to simply kill him. The king needed to be taken alive and paraded through the streets of Earth, a symbol of Krell defeat and human triumph. As the team approached the flagship, the tension in the air was palpable. Their cloaking technology was holding, but the slightest misstep could alert the Krell to their presence. The flagship was a fortress, with layers of defenses designed to protect the Krell leadership from any conceivable threat. Yet humanity had developed new tricks over the course of the war. The team's craft docked at a rarely used maintenance hatch, a weak point in the ship's defenses identified through captured intelligence. Inside, the Krell ship was a maze of dark, narrow corridors. The air was thick with the mechanical hum of the ship's massive engines and the sharp, acrid scent of alien technology. The team moved silently, their training and equipment allowing them to blend into the shadows. Each step was measured, every corner approached with caution. They knew they were deep in enemy territory, surrounded by a force that would crush them if discovered. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the central command center where the Krell King resided. He was heavily guarded by his elite warriors, massive armored figures who towered over even the largest human soldiers. These Krell were battle-hardened, the best of the best, bred and trained for war. The human team knew that a direct assault would be suicide. Instead, they relied on their advanced technology and tactics, using EMP grenades to disable the Krell armor and disrupt their communications. The battle that ensued was brutal and swift. The Krell elite fought fiercely, but they were unprepared for the precision and ruthlessness of the human strike team. Plasma shots echoed through the command center as humans and Krell clashed in a savage melee. The humans moved like shadows, using every advantage they could find, while the Krell, despite their physical superiority, struggled without the use of their malfunctioning armor. It wasn't long before the Krell guards lay dead, their massive bodies slumped against the walls. The team advanced on the throne-like command chair at the center of the room, where the Krell King sat, his cold, reptilian eyes glaring at them. He was larger than any other Krell they had encountered, his ceremonial armor covered in intricate symbols that spoke of his power and lineage. For a moment there was a tense silence. The Krell King did not rise to fight. He sat, motionless, as if daring the humans to make their move. One of the soldiers aimed a weapon at him, ready to finish the mission then and there, but their leader, Captain Sarah Donovan, stopped him with a hand. "No," she said quietly, her voice hard. "We take him alive." The king's eyes narrowed, and for the first time there was a flicker of something in his gaze that could have been fear. He had never imagined that these humans, these primitive creatures, would have the audacity to capture him. But now, surrounded by the bodies of his elite guards, with human weapons trained on him, the realization sank in. With the Krell King restrained, the team prepared for extraction. The human strike team moved with practiced efficiency, securing their captive and planting explosives throughout the command center to ensure the ship would be crippled as they made their escape. Alarms began to blare as Krell forces scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The humans had the king, and they were already on their way back to Earth. As the team's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, the Krell King stared out the window at the planet below, his expression unreadable. He had underestimated these humans, and now he would face the consequences. The king, who had once boasted of crushing humanity under his heel, was now their prisoner, destined to become a symbol of his species' downfall. The moment the shuttle touched down in the heart of New York City, a massive crowd had already gathered, awaiting the return of the soldiers. The world had been watching in anticipation, their collective breath held as they waited for news of the mission's success. When the doors of the shuttle opened and the Krell King was dragged out, the crowd erupted into a mixture of cheers and cries of shock. The alien monarch, once feared across the galaxy, now stood powerless in the midst of the very people he had sought to conquer. The human soldiers forced the Krell King to his knees, shackled and surrounded by armed guards. There would be no mercy. This was not a prisoner exchange or a negotiation. This was a message to the Krell and any other species that thought Earth could be conquered. As the Krell King looked out over the sea of human faces, there was no mistaking the hatred in their eyes. They had suffered under his invasion, their cities reduced to ruins, their loved ones killed, and their future threatened. But now they had him living proof that humanity was not weak, not to be trifled with. Across the galaxy, other worlds watched in stunned silence as the video feeds of the Krell King's capture spread. This was more than just a victory for Earth. It was a statement humanity had the will and the means to fight back, no matter the odds. The Krell forces in orbit, upon hearing of their king's capture, faltered. Without their leader, they were directionless, and their spirit was broken. Within hours, Krell commanders across the planet ordered a full retreat. The invasion, which had seemed so certain just days ago, was now a catastrophic failure. Earth was victorious, but at a cost that would be felt for generations to come. As the Krell ships left Earth's atmosphere, one truth was clear to both sides: this was not just the end of a battle, it was the beginning of a new era. The Krell had demanded war, and humanity had answered with a brutality and resolve that none had expected. But the war wasn't over yet, not truly. There would be consequences, both for the Krell and for humanity itself. The streets of New York City were filled with a throng of people, their voices a mix of anger, triumph, and a collective thirst for justice. Every screen across the world displayed the same image: the Krell King, bound in chains, being paraded through the streets under heavy human guard. It was a spectacle designed not just for the people of Earth, but for the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity would not be broken, and those who sought to conquer them would pay the ultimate price. The Krell King, once a towering figure of strength and dominance, was now reduced to a prisoner, his once ornate armor tarnished and shattered, his head held low as he stumbled along the broken pavement. The jeers of the crowd grew louder with each step, a torrent of rage directed at the alien monarch who had brought so much death and destruction to their world. The king, though proud, now faced a reality: he had never considered defeat at the hands of the very species he had deemed inferior. As the procession made its way through the city, the atmosphere became more charged. Buildings that had been reduced to rubble during the invasion loomed in the background, a stark reminder of the devastation the Krell had wrought. Yet, amidst the wreckage, there was an undeniable sense of unity among the humans. This moment, this brutal display, was not just about retribution, it was about survival. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Krell King's once intimidating presence had evaporated, leaving only the broken shell of a conqueror who had been stripped of everything. His gaze, cold and distant, remained fixed on the ground as he was dragged forward, stumbling under the weight of his chains. The human soldiers surrounding him offered no mercy, pulling him relentlessly through the streets, ensuring he could feel the full force of his humiliation. The crowd, which stretched as far as the eye could see, hurled insults, debris, and curses at the alien king. They were the survivors of his invasion, people who had lost their homes, their families, their cities. Their hatred was palpable, and though the soldiers kept the mob from getting too close, the Krell King could feel the weight of their anger pressing down on him like a physical force. As the king was dragged through the city, news of the event spread across the galaxy. On far-flung planets, species that had once feared the Krell Dominion watched the broadcast with wide eyes. This was not just a human victory, it was a declaration that the Krell, once thought invincible, could be defeated. The sight of their king, humbled and humiliated, sent shockwaves through the Krell ranks across the galaxy. For the first time in living memory, the Krell's iron grip on their empire began to loosen. But the spectacle was far from over. The procession led to a large square in the heart of the city, where a stage had been set. On it stood a platform, stark and foreboding, designed for the public execution of the Krell King. Thousands had gathered to witness the moment, and millions more watched through their screens, eager to see the end of the alien ruler who had brought so much pain to their world. The human leaders, including President Elena Nakamura, stood silently at the edges of the stage. They had made the decision not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. The Krell King's death would be a signal to the galaxy, a demonstration of human resolve. There would be no negotiation, no trial, only justice for the billions who had suffered. The Krell King was forced to his knees in the center of the stage, his wrists and ankles bound tightly to metal posts. His once majestic form now seemed small and frail, his eyes still burning with defiance even as his fate became clear. For all his strength, all his arrogance, he had been brought low by the very species he had sought to enslave. A hush fell over the crowd as President Nakamura stepped forward, her voice ringing out clearly over the silence. "Today, humanity stands united," she said, her tone solemn. "We do not rejoice in the suffering of others, but we will defend ourselves against those who seek to destroy us. This war was brought to our doorstep by a leader who believed we were weak, who sought to enslave us. But he was wrong. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will never kneel. With that, the executioner, a tall, silent figure in black, stepped forward, holding the ceremonial blade that would end the Krell King's life. The crowd held its breath. The king did not beg, did not cry out. His gaze lifted one last time to the sky, as though searching for something beyond his captors. Then, with a swift motion, the blade came down. The sound of the blade slicing through the air was met with a collective exhale from the crowd. The Krell King's head rolled to the ground, his body slumping forward, lifeless. For a moment there was silence, as if the world itself was absorbing the gravity of the moment. And then, like a wave, the crowd erupted into cheers, a cathartic release of the rage and pain they had held inside since the invasion began. The video feed of the execution was broadcast not just on Earth but to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. On Krell-held worlds, the sight of their king's severed head sent shockwaves through the population. The Krell, who had ruled through fear and dominance, now faced the terrifying reality of rebellion. Without their leader, they were lost, and within days, the first whispers of revolt began to spread through their empire. On Earth, the mood was one of victory, but also reflection. The war had been won, but at great cost. Cities lay in ruins, millions of lives had been lost, and the human spirit had been tested in ways it never had before. Yet, through it all, humanity had emerged stronger. They had faced down an alien empire and, against all odds, triumphed. But as the cheers died down and the crowd began to disperse, a question lingered in the air: what kind of world would they build from the ashes of this war? The Krell ships in orbit had already begun retreating, their forces shattered by the loss of their king. The once mighty invasion fleet, which had blocked out the stars, was now a fleeing remnant, scattered and leaderless. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had not just survived, they had won. Yet, even in victory, there was an unease. The brutality it had taken to achieve this moment had left its mark on humanity. They had been forced to become as ruthless, as unyielding as the enemies they fought. As Earth's leaders looked out over the wreckage of their cities and the bodies of the fallen, they couldn't help but wonder what kind of people they had become to secure their survival, and what would be the cost of that victory in the days to come. For now, however, the war was over, and Earth stood free. But the galaxy would never forget the day the humans dragged the Krell King through the streets and made him a symbol of their unbreakable will.